Imagine you've spent like the entire day typing up this highly complex, incredibly important document on your computer.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
Right. You've poured hours of focus into getting every single sentence perfectly right. And then, just as you finish that final page, instead of clicking the save button, you reach down and pull the power plug right out of the wall.
Just completely killed power.
Exactly. The screen goes black. Every single thing you worked on is just gone forever.
It's a really painful scenario to picture. But scientifically speaking, that is precisely what you're doing to your brain when you stay up until like 2 in the morning trying to force new English vocabulary into your head.
Wow, so you're doing all the typing, but you're refusing to let the machine actually save the document.
That's exactly it. You do the work, but you skip the save process.
And that really frames what we're talking about today. Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. We usually approach learning a difficult new skill with this brutal, no pain, no gain mentality.
Right. We assume we just have to push through it.
Yeah, we assume the only way to master a new language is to just chain ourselves to a desk, stare at a textbook until our eyes hurt, and just push through the exhaustion.
But when we look at the actual science of how human beings acquire knowledge, that strategy is completely backward.
Completely backward. So today, we're taking a deep dive into the true machinery of learning. We're exploring a concept that often gets completely misunderstood, which is self-care.
But to be clear, we are not talking about, expensive spa days or fancy bath bombs here.
No, definitely not. We're pulling from some great educational sources today to look at self-care specifically for learners. And the mission of this deep dive is to break down 3 core pillars: the body, the mind, and your feelings.
Right, because we're talking about the biological and psychological prerequisites for learning. The data we're looking at makes it very clear that self-care is not a luxury. It is an essential operational tool.
An operational tool, I like that.
Yeah, because if you're trying to master something as complex as the English language, the way you maintain your physical and mental machinery directly determines whether that new information actually sticks, or if it just, bounces right off.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the first pillar, the physical foundation. Think of your body as the house where your brain lives.
Right, the physical structure.
You cannot expect the computer inside to process heavy data if the roof of the house is caving in and the power is constantly flickering.
That makes total sense.
And the absolute foundation of that house, the process that actually saves the data you worked so hard to learn, is sleep.
Sleep is so widely misunderstood. People think of it as just a period of inactivity, like you're just turning the brain off.
Just powering down for the night.
Exactly. But in reality, sleep is a highly active, biologically intense process. When you are awake and learning new English words, your brain is holding that information in a temporary storage area. It's called the hippocampus.
The hippocampus. So that's like the temporary holding zone.
Right. You can think of the hippocampus like a small USB flash drive. It fills up really quickly.
It has a limited capacity. So eventually, there's simply no more room to hold any new grammar rules or vocabulary words?
Precisely. And this is where sleep becomes absolutely critical. During specific phases of sleep, particularly your deep sleep and REM sleep, your brain physically transfers that new information.
It moves it from the USB drive.
Yes, it moves it from that temporary USB drive of the hippocampus over to the permanent hard drive of your neocortex.
Wow.
It builds new neural pathways. It physically wires the language into your long-term memory.
So if you skip sleep to study for 1 more hour, you are essentially preventing that transfer.
You're blocking it. The USB drive gets wiped clean the next day to make room for new things. And the vocabulary you sacrifice your sleep to study just floats away. It's gone.
Okay, I understand the biology there, and the save button analogy makes total sense. But I want to push back on the framing for just a second.
Sure, go ahead.
When we talk about getting enough sleep or drinking water, is this really self-care? I mean, it sounds more like basic human maintenance. It feels a bit like congratulating yourself for remembering to breathe.
Well, the action itself is basic maintenance, yeah. But what elevates it to self-care is the intention and the mindset behind it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we live in a culture that totally glorifies the hustle. Learners often feel a tremendous amount of guilt if they close their books at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, absolutely. They tell themselves they're being lazy.
Exactly. They think a truly dedicated student would stay up until midnight. So recognizing that going to bed is actually the most productive thing you can do for your education requires a really profound shift in perspective.
I see. It means prioritizing biological reality over the artificial pressure to constantly be grinding.
Right. You are actively choosing to protect your learning process rather than punish yourself.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of that basic biological reality, another major factor in this physical house is hydration.
Oh, water is huge.
Right. Because a massive percentage of the human brain, around 70%, actually is just water.
And because of that high water content, your brain is really, really sensitive to even minor dehydration.
Like, how sensitive are we talking?
A drop in hydration of just 2% is enough to trigger noticeable cognitive impairment.
Just 2%. And the trap so many ambitious learners fall into is substituting water with caffeine.
Yes, the classic coffee trap.
You wake up feeling sluggish. You have this massive list of English idioms to memorize. So you drink like 3 cups of coffee.
And the next thing you know, you have a dull headache.
Right. You can't focus on a single sentence, and you feel like you're trying to think through a thick layer of mud.
Because caffeine is a stimulant, it blocks the receptors in your brain that tell you you're tired. It makes you feel alert temporarily.
But it doesn't actually fix the problem.
Not at all. It does absolutely nothing to replenish the fluid that the 70% of your brain desperately needs to conduct electrical signals.
So the signals just can't travel properly.
Exactly. When you're dehydrated, the actual communication between your neurons slows down. Your working memory shrinks. Your ability to solve complex problems just drops.
So before you criticize yourself for failing to understand a tricky grammar structure, you really have to ask if your brain actually has the physical fluid it needs to process the thought.
It's a hardware issue, not a software issue.
Yeah. You cannot run a heavy program on a computer that is overheating.
That's a great way to put it.
So we have sleep to save the memory, water to keep the signals firing rapidly, and the third physical component from our sources is how we rest our eyes and our attention.
Right, this is such a crucial piece.
The recommendation here is remarkably simple. It's just to take a short walk outside and specifically look at things in the distance, like trees or the sky. But why is the distance so important?
It comes down to a concept called directed attention fatigue.
Directed attention fatigue. What is that?
Well, when you are studying a language, you're usually staring at a book or a phone screen or a computer monitor. This requires intense, sustained muscular effort from the eyes to focus on something very close to your face.
Like you're locked in.
And it also requires an enormous amount of directed cognitive energy to filter out distractions and stare at those specific symbols on the page.
It's almost like holding a heavy weight straight out in front of you. Eventually,
Yeah.
the muscle's just going to shake and give out.
Yes, exactly. So looking at a distant horizon or looking at the chaotic organic shapes of trees, that requires a completely different type of visual and cognitive processing.
What's that called?
It's called soft fascination.
Soft fascination. I like that.
Yeah, the muscles in your eyes physically relax when they focus on infinity.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't have to work hard to interpret the shape of a tree, it just absorbs it.
So taking 10 minutes to step outside and look at the sky is a literal physiological reset button for your attention span.
It absolutely is. It allows those cognitive muscles to drop the heavy weight, recover, and prepare to lift again.
Okay, so the physical house is totally optimized. The brain is well rested, fully hydrated, and visually refreshed.
The hardware is good to go.
But having a perfectly tuned biological machine does not guarantee success if the internal environment of that machine is just absolute chaos.
Oh, for sure. You can have a fully fueled sports car, but if the driver is having a panic attack, you are not going to win the race.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second major area of our deep dive, the mind, and the critical necessity of clearing cognitive clutter.
Anyone who has ever tried to learn a second language knows exactly what a noisy mind feels like.
Oh, definitely. You sit down at your desk, you open the textbook, and immediately your brain starts shouting multiple things at once.
It's so overwhelming.
Part of your brain is trying to decode the English sentence. Another part is screaming, "This is too hard, you sound stupid when you speak."
And a third part is wondering what you're going to make for dinner, or whether you replied to your boss's email.
Right, so what's actually happening there?
Well, in cognitive psychology, this is referred to as cognitive load. Your working memory can only juggle a very small number of items at one time.
It's a very small space.
Very small. So if half of your available mental RAM is being consumed by anxiety, self-doubt, and daily life stress, you simply do not have enough processing power left to decode a foreign language.
The noise basically crowds out the learning.
It crowds it out completely.
So based on our sources, the primary strategy for quieting this noise is unplugging. Specifically, intentionally turning off phones and televisions for a dedicated block of time, even just 30 minutes.
Which is harder than it sounds.
It is. There is this brilliant analogy in our source material that compares social media to junk food for the brain. And I think we need to really dig into why scrolling on a phone destroys our ability to study.
Yeah, let's get into it.
It's not just about wasting time, right?
Yeah.
Actually changes the brain's chemistry.
It does. Social media applications are meticulously engineered to function like slot machines. Every time you scroll, you are pulling the lever, hoping for a tiny, unpredictable hit of dopamine.
Wow.
You see a funny video, dopamine spikes. You see a beautiful picture of someone's vacation, dopamine spikes. And that's often followed closely by a spike in cortisol if you feel envious or inadequate.
So you're flooding your brain with extreme artificial stimulation. It's really like eating an entire bag of pure sugar.
That's the junk food analogy, yeah.
You get a massive rush, but it contains zero nutritional value.
And the consequence of that sugar rush is the crash. When you finally put the phone down and open a textbook, the textbook feels agonizingly boring.
Because it's not a slot machine.
Exactly. A page of English text doesn't flash, it doesn't play music, and it doesn't give you an instant reward every 3 seconds. Your brain's reward system has been totally exhausted by the slot machine.
So unplugging from the digital noise isn't about punishing yourself. It's about resetting your dopamine baseline so that your brain can actually engage with slower, more meaningful information.
Right. Once you clear out that junk food, the question is what you feed the brain instead.
And a really fascinating recommendation here is to spend time reading a simple storybook for fun. But I actually have a very practical question here.
Okay, what is it?
If the listener's ultimate goal is to master English, and they only have a limited amount of time, shouldn't they be using their downtime to study the actual mechanics and rules of the language?
You mean like grammar?
Yeah, like why read a simple story when you could be memorizing a grammar table?
It definitely seems counterintuitive if you view learning purely as a mechanical exercise. But human beings do not acquire language strictly by memorizing rules.
We don't.
No, we acquire it through exposure to comprehensible input in a low-stress environment. When you study a grammar book, your brain is engaged in analytical problem solving. It's looking for parameters, right and wrong, strict structures.
That sounds exhausting.
It is high-friction work.
You're constantly testing yourself, basically waiting to make a mistake.
Exactly. But when you read a simple, engaging storybook, that friction disappears. Your affective filter, which is basically the psychological wall built by anxiety and pressure, completely lowers.
Oh, that makes sense. The wall comes down.
Your brain relaxes into the narrative. You begin absorbing vocabulary, sentence rhythms, and context organically without even realizing you're working.
That sounds so much more pleasant.
It is. Furthermore, it reconnects you with the fundamental joy of language. It reminds you that the entire point of learning English is not to pass a grammar test. It's to understand ideas, to hear stories, and to connect with other human beings.
It's the difference between studying the chemical composition of paint and actually going to a museum to look at a beautiful painting.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
You need to remind yourself why you like the paint in the first place.
Exactly.
But of course, the anxiety doesn't just vanish forever. Eventually, you do have to take the test. You do have to speak to a native speaker.
And the panic comes rushing back.
Right. When that panic rises, the sources highlight a very specific physiological intervention we can use. It's a breathing technique. You inhale for 4 seconds, hold, and then exhale slowly for 5 seconds.
Breathing techniques often sound like a cliche, you know, but they are grounded in hard neurology. The student in the source material testing this method immediately noted feeling a sense of safety.
Safety.
Yes,
Yeah.
that word safety is the key to everything.
But how does simply counting the seconds of your breath convince your brain that you are safe from an English test?
It acts directly on the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system. When you're confronted with a stressful situation like forgetting a crucial word in the middle of a sentence, your body perceives that stress as a literal threat to your survival.
A literal threat.
Yes. It triggers the sympathetic nervous system, the famous fight or flight response. Your heart rate accelerates, your breathing becomes shallow, and crucially, your brain redirects energy away from the prefrontal cortex, which handles complex thought.
And it sends that energy to your muscles so you can run away.
Exactly.
So your body literally thinks there's a tiger in the room. And it decides that memorizing verb tenses is really not important when you're about to be eaten.
Right. So by deliberately taking control of your diaphragm, inhaling for 4 seconds, and intentionally making the exhale longer, pushing the air out for 5 seconds, you are manually hitting the override switch.
Ah, the override switch.
The long exhale stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest mode.
Yeah.
You are sending a mechanical signal from your lungs and heart back up to your brain, confirming that there is no tiger.
You are literally tricking your biological alarm system into turning off.
Yes. And once the alarm is off, the prefrontal cortex comes back online, and you can finally remember that word you were looking for.
So the physical body is calmed, the cognitive clutter is cleared, and the alarm bells are silenced.
Ah!
But even with a perfectly calm mind and a rested body, you are still going to make mistakes.
You are. It is the inescapable reality of learning anything difficult.
You'll pronounce something wrong, you'll use the wrong tense, and you will feel embarrassed. And that brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult piece of this puzzle today. The inner voice and how we handle our feelings.
The way a learner reacts to their own inevitable failures is the single biggest predictor of whether they will eventually succeed or quit entirely.
There is this glaring hypocrisy in human nature that becomes terribly obvious when we try to learn a language. When we make a mistake, the internal monologue is often vicious.
Oh, we are so mean to ourselves.
We really are. We tell ourselves, you are so stupid, you will never get this, you are terrible at English. But if you pause and ask yourself one simple question, would I ever say these words to my best friend? The realization is pretty shocking.
It really is. You would never look a friend in the eye who is struggling to learn a new skill and tell them they are stupid.
We would be horrified. If a friend made a mistake, we would offer comfort. We would say, it's totally fine, you are just learning, you are doing a great job. Why do we offer limitless grace to the people around us, but subject ourselves to absolute cruelty?
It stems from a misguided belief about motivation. We harbor this illusion that being harsh and punitive with ourselves will somehow, whip us into shape.
We think that cruelty will prevent us from making the same mistake twice.
Right. But psychologically, the exact opposite occurs. Negative self-talk generates massive amounts of cortisol, the stress hormone. And as we just established with the breathing exercise, stress shuts down the learning centers of the brain.
So by beating yourself up for not knowing a word, you are biochemically guaranteeing that it will be even harder to learn the word the next time.
You are shooting your own tires.
Wow.
Replacing that critical inner voice with the voice of a supportive friend is not just about feeling warm and fuzzy. It is a tactical requirement for neuroplasticity.
You have to create an internal environment where it is safe to fail, because failure is the only mechanism through which the brain actually calibrates and learns.
Exactly. And there is one tiny 3-letter word that acts as a hinge for this entire mindset shift.
What's the word?
It's the word yet. Think about the difference between saying, I do not understand this grammar rule, and saying, I do not understand this grammar rule yet.
Oh, that is powerful.
That single word encapsulates the entire philosophy of a growth mindset. I do not understand is a definitive statement. It closes the door. It accepts failure as a permanent identity.
But adding yet instantly reframes the failure as just a temporary point on a much longer timeline.
It acknowledges the current reality without predicting a doomed future.
It is profoundly empowering. It gives you permission to be a work in progress.
And part of being a work in progress is recognizing that your entire identity cannot be tied to how productive or successful you are at studying.
Which leads to the necessity of having hobbies, according to our sources. Things you do simply to fill your cup. And the best part is, you do not even have to be good at them.
Yes. Doing something purely for the joy of the process without any concern for the outcome or the quality is vital. Whether it's painting clumsy green clouds on a canvas or strumming a guitar when you only know 3 basic chords.
It's the deliberate rejection of the idea that every minute of your life must be spent improving yourself or achieving a goal.
Which is hard for learners to accept.
So hard. When you are a highly motivated learner, it is so easy to fall into the trap of feeling guilty anytime you step away from the desk. You think, I should be studying right now.
Which brings us to the ultimate metaphor for this entire deep dive. The airplane oxygen mask. It is the perfect counterargument to that persistent guilt.
Let's explain that. Every time you fly on a colloquial airplane, the flight attendant gives the exact same safety briefing. If the cabin loses pressure, the oxygen mask will drop from the ceiling.
Right.
And the instruction is always, without fail, to put your own mask on first before you attempt to help anyone else, even your own children.
Because if you ignore that instruction and immediately try to help the person next to you, you will quickly run out of oxygen yourself.
You'll pass out.
You'll pass out. And once you pass out, you are completely incapable of helping anyone, and you have become a liability.
So self-care is the oxygen mask. Taking the time to sleep, drinking water, unplugging from social media, playing the guitar badly, and being kind to yourself when you fail. None of this is selfish.
It's really not.
If you continuously deprive yourself of these biological and emotional necessities in the name of studying harder, you will eventually run out of oxygen. You will burn out.
You will abandon the language entirely, and you won't be able to reach your goals or support the people who depend on you.
The realization that anchors all of this is a simple paradigm-shifting phrase. Rest is productive.
Rest is productive. Resting is not a pause in the journey. It is the act of refueling the engine so that the vehicle can actually reach the destination.
Let's pull all of this together. The journey of mastering English, or any difficult subject, requires you to maintain three distinct but interconnected systems.
First, the body. You have to treat your physical house with respect by prioritizing sleep to permanently save your memories, hydrating your brain so the signals can fire, and stepping outside to let your visual focus recover.
Second, the mind. You have to clear the cognitive clutter by recognizing social media as the dopamine slot machine that it is. Unplugging to reset your attention, finding the low-friction joy in a simple storybook, and using slow exhales to convince your nervous system that you are safe from the tiger.
And finally, your feelings. You have to dismantle the cruel inner critic and replace it with the voice of a supportive friend. You have to embrace hobbies that offer no productive value other than pure joy, and recognize that putting your own oxygen mask on first is the only way to survive the flight.
And, none of these strategies require massive, disruptive life changes.
Yeah.
You do not have to quit your job or spend a fortune.
No, they are micro-adjustments. A glass of water, a 10-minute walk, 30 minutes without a phone, treating yourself with a little more grace.
These small daily choices compound over time. They transform the exhausting, grinding work of learning into a sustainable and deeply rewarding process. Because the goal is not just to survive the education. The goal is to actually enjoy the person you are becoming while you learn.
That's the real reward.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final thought to carry with you. We explored the transformative power of the word yet. I want you to look at your own life right now. Think of one massive frustration you are currently facing.
Maybe it is a specific English pronunciation you cannot master, a project at work that is stalled, or a personal goal that feels entirely out of reach.
Say your frustration out loud and then just add the word yet to the end of the sentence.
I haven't figured this out yet.
Feel how the heavy locked door in your mind suddenly cracks open. Building a new skill takes an enormous amount of time, but as long as you take care of the machinery, you will get there. Thanks for joining us, and keep taking care of yourselves.